Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show. My guest today, Liz Beardsley, Senior Policy Counsel of the U.S. Green Building Council. That's a lot of councils, Liz.
Yes. Thank you so much for inviting us here today.
Well, that's great having you. So tell me a little bit about the Green Building Council.
So the U.S. Green Building Council, USGBC, we've been around about 20 years. We're a nonprofit mission-based organization with lots of members across the spectrum, from businesses to governments to individuals. And our mission is to transform the built environment to one that is sustainable, resilient, and supportive of health for everyone.
And how many members do you have?
We have 12,000 organizational members, and then another around 200,000 professionals who are associated with our credential or members.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of members.
Yeah.
So what's the state of green building today?
Green building is healthy and continuing to grow. We have a unique model in that we are trying to, with our most well-known recognition, the LEED building certification, trying to recognize the top performers in building. And so what we try to do is, by rewarding the top, we're educating the construction workforce and designers and spreading the ability to build green to everyone. And then as the bottom comes up, then we have to raise the bar again. So we're now on our fourth iteration of LEED and are seeing improvement with building codes having come up and some practices being mainstream. We know we have so much more to do, of course, but it's a healthy part of construction now.
So has the definition of LEEDs changed over time? And I know there are different levels.
Yeah.
So tell me quickly about those, whether it's platinum or silver or whatever
Yeah.
it is. I feel like it's an airline frequent flyer program.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea is, I think we also want to make it a system that's understandable and fun, and people can access it. And actually, that was really one of the original concepts, is that the market, people who buy and use buildings, which is basically all of us, want to be able to recognize what is a green building and not just have all these different claims and not know like what's real. So the idea of the LEED certification is you get a third party to review that you actually have accomplished all these things, and based on how many points you earn, then that establishes whether you're certified, which is the lowest, silver, gold, or platinum, which is the highest level. Yeah.
All right. And what are the economics of green building today? What I think is the case for green building financially?
Yeah. So green buildings are generally more energy efficient, more water efficient. They also promote indoor environments that are healthier and can allow more productivity of employees. That alone can have a significant financial value. I think the business case is really that through those savings and increased productivity. And there's also been numerous studies showing that certainly in like commercial real estate, that there's an increased return on investment, increased asset value, increased lease rates, as well as rents and things like that. So it's really proven out through numerous studies over the last several decades.
So in terms of green building and what's happening, what are some of the kind of more interesting developments in recent years? I mean, you now have buildings that are generating net energy, for example. So talk a little bit about that, because I think most members of the public don't know that. Or you have buildings that have walls of water and algae that are, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. In Germany, they've tested this model that actually generate energy for the building. So tell me a little bit about what's going on in the field, at least of what you're aware.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting areas, as you say, is materials. So there's a whole bunch of researchers and some building practitioners who are really working on how do we use that mass of a building. So, you think of your walls, your concrete, or whether it's a steel frame or whatever, and use that mass to bind carbon. So there's some experimentation of different kinds of materials that can go into a concrete that can bind carbon over time. So I think that's really an interesting area.
Taking carbon out of the system, essentially.
Right, exactly, yeah. So it can't be released back to the atmosphere. There's certainly a lot going on with buildings and health, and so productivity, human health, and sort of we already know about carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and other things, VOCs, volatile organic carbons. But really there's like the whole full range of allergens, and how do we create places that encourage health and wellness. And then on the other, it's not just that air quality, but also, you know, being able to see daylight, having a connection with nature, having stairs that encourage you to take them instead of an elevator, which is actually better for you and the environment. So I think there's a whole realm of area of design to promote better interaction with the building. The building should be serving people.
So you're not into hermetically sealed buildings with cubicles and old-fashioned fluorescent lights, it sounds like.
No, but I might have started my career in that kind of a building.
Join the club, and there's still many. And in that vein, let's talk about, I mean, one of the really interesting facets of building and construction is that if you do something with a view towards green building from the ground up, it's certainly much easier to do and much less expensive than retrofitting. Tell me about kind of the state of the art of retrofitting, because when you talk about retrofitting the buildings you and I just referred to in our earlier days, those are really expensive to retrofit. But how is that changing?
Well, the first cost is expensive, but I'm not sure over the life cycle that it is expensive to retrofit. And we've actually seen great cases of buildings that you would think this could never be possible actually go through retrofits. So one iconic example is the U.S. Treasury building in Washington, D.C., which is, you know, the classic from that era of government construction, and yet that's achieved a LEED certification and saves millions of dollars in energy costs each year. So it can be done. I think the problem with existing buildings is really the inertia factor, because even though you can invest in the building and save a lot, and that will pay for itself on a life cycle basis, you still have to come up with that first cost. You have to deal with, you know, there's a lot of human energy that goes into a renovation project. So I think that's where we see, you know, we still need more to incentivize action in that area.
So yeah, I mean, the big challenge is you may get the payback over time, but you have to invest a large sum initially, and then you also have the displacement temporarily
Potentially,
of people, so loss of productivity, et cetera. But the Treasury building, I've been in that building, so that's a great story. In terms of when you look at promoting green building and the public's awareness of it versus people in the industry, people in building, in construction, in real estate. How much does the public really know about green building and healthy buildings at this point?
That's a great question. I don't know if we know that, because we are more often talking within our industry or people that we touch. But I'll say it this way. I think what we really strive for is for green building to be the norm, and for people to know just sort of intrinsically that, you know, they walk into a space and they feel more comfortable. And even if they don't know why, it's because there's some sunlight or there's a green wall, or they don't smell anything, right? They don't have there's no artificial scent in the air.
Or they're at Amazon and they're smelling a jungle or something like that.
Yeah, right. So I'm not sure of the awareness of sort of the average person, but there's certainly a huge awareness in real estate and throughout government, I think.
As well. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Liz Beardsley of the U.S. Green Building Council in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Let's make journalism great again.
Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm with Liz Beardsley of the U.S. Green Building Council, the Senior Policy Council, spelled differently than Green Building Council. Boy, that's going to confuse a lot of people. So are there any communities, whether in the United States or on the planet, that were totally built green in terms of using green building codes, LEEDs, or similar types of standards?
There have been some. One I can think of in Florida is actually a retrofit, back to your other question, and has incorporated, renewable energy and EV charging and green construction to retrofit its buildings. That actually has achieved net zero in some, I think, within its little area. We have a number of LEED for neighborhood development communities across the country and in a few other countries as well. That system is like LEED, but it's on a more of a planning and neighborhood planning scale. It can be used for infill in cities as well as more suburban type locations, but it's hard. It starts at the very beginning. There's a lot of process to incorporate community input. But there are a number of those. And then I think what we see is that there's a lot in Asia with new construction where new cities are going up where there was nothing before. So there's a few countries that are really doing a lot with green cities from the ground up. And those are, I've only seen pictures, but they're pretty impressive.
How about, are you familiar at all with Masdar City? Have you, in Abu Dhabi? Because that's a city that's being built from the ground up that's supposed to be a totally sustainable city. And it's, I mean, they've already built a lot of it. They're not done. But the original engineering was done by a firm here locally in Colorado, CH2M Hill, which became CH2M, and then got bought by Jacobs. So anyway, so I was curious if you were familiar with that. So it seems again that in your example or your point in Asia, where you have huge population growth and the need to literally build new cities, that's easier to do than, for example, here in the United States. Building a new city here is not something that happens every day. To put it mildly. You've done work internationally as well. Are there some countries that you think the United States could learn a lot from, or any examples of projects that you think could be replicated here?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's some sharing of policies in the international conferences, both national, and now we're seeing more like state collaboration and even city engagement to try to share best practices. I think with certainly in the climate context, we know we need to achieve a lot more through our buildings. We need to get about 30% reduction in building energy intensity in the next 20 years. So that's going to require increasing our rate of retrofit by quite a bit and getting all the new construction closer to net zero energy. So I think we're seeing countries sort of grapple with how to do that. There's a lot more focus right now perhaps on changing the energy grid where the costs are coming down so much and there's a lot of opportunity that's more available.
So in terms of the energy grid, because there's so much wind energy available, but not necessarily in convenient locations, and so your reference is to expand the grid so we can take advantage of those, given the production costs of wind energy have just dropped precipitously. And of course, same with solar. How about in terms of solar and what's happening? I've been amazed at thin film technology advancements, what's happening with solar, with what's being done with windows. Can you talk a little bit about where that is today and where you see that going in terms of building materials, using solar, using technology to not only provide electricity to buildings, but to heat buildings and to even cool buildings in terms of building materials. I don't know if you're familiar with all those subjects, but I'd love you to talk a little bit about all that, because I think a lot of people don't realize how advanced, how much progress there's been on the building materials front.
Right, no, absolutely. And I mean, first started with, of course, the big investment in solar technology at the very basic level with the national labs, including work done here in Colorado. So that's really important.
Right, National
to
Renewable
note,
Energy
NREL.
Laboratory, right.
And then becoming commercial and still like kind of just being out there. And then we've just seen in the last decade this huge drop in price in solar cells. So now with companies like Tesla and others making this thin film, and I was just reading about it as well, it's going to be like, you know, like newspapers used to run, now they're going to be running solar film and then applying it to different surfaces. So I think the solar roofs are going to be really, the shingles, roof shingles, it's going to be something to watch, especially to see if that price can drop as well.
It will.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just a
certainly
matter
it
of
will.
when, right.
So I think it's really exciting, and I think it will be interesting. We may have a time where the regulations need to catch up. So that would be something we should probably start working on now.
Well, and talk about that, because one of the things, I mean, what you're obliquely referencing is the concept of the distribution of energy and the fact that we're really moving towards possibilities where with thin film technology and other solar opportunities and what building materials can do, where you're building homes, apartment buildings, office buildings that don't rely on the grid to the extent that they do today, where buildings are producing their own energy. So how does that, from a regulatory perspective, again, I may be asking too much, but you know, what's your take on that, and how do you see things in 10 or 20 years?
I mean, I think we're already seeing in some places that there's real concern that too many building owners will go to solar and producing their own energy, and that it's going to disrupt the ability of the grid to just simply maintain itself. In most cases, a building will still need grid energy for backup, for resilience, and so changing the equation of, you know, can you sell excess energy back? What are your prices to buy and all that? What's the standby charges? Those can have a big impact on every property owner's decision. And then I think in some markets, there's even been a cap on the total distributed energy that can be connected to the grid. So, so these are some of the questions that are already coming up, and then the more availability through some of these other materials technologies and costs coming down, those will, I think, get exacerbated. So I think there's still a lot of sorting out to be done. You know, what we want to encourage is for grids and buildings to start working together more. And so we've done that a bit through the LEED credits, but we also have an analogous program for grids. It's called PEER, P-E-E-R. And that sort of looks to optimize the efficiency of the grid, to provide customer service, which means really allowing building grid interaction through such things as distributed energy going both ways, storage, sustainability of the grid, and resilience and reliability. So I think there's a lot more that can be done. I think if we, you know, rather than look at each building in a silo, the more we can start to see it as a system, the better off we'll be. So I think that's part of the shift we'll start seeing in the next 10 years, but we'll see.
Well, and then add battery technology to that, and you're really going to have a shock on the system. All right, we're going to take our last break. We'll be back with Liz in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
Safely stop fires around your home. Introducing the Fire Ice XT 20-ounce aerosol canister. Fire Ice XT is an eco-friendly water-based fire suppressant gel. Unlike a traditional fire extinguisher, Fire Ice XT is a highly effective, non-toxic firefighting agent that is easy and safe to use around your home, family, and pets. Available at Amazon.com or call 800-924-4874.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. Hi, I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Because I've never done endorsements or commercials, people ask how are our programs funded, especially because we provide them as a public service to all our broadcast outlets. It's expensive to produce our show, whether we do them here in Denver or go to places such as Aspen, Washington, D.C., or even Iraq. The answer is we depend on contributions to support our work to bring you some of the nation's top opinion leaders. Individuals, businesses, foundations, and other nonprofits make tax-deductible contributions to the Democracy and Media Education Foundation to help allow us to continue to work for you. To find out more or to make a donation, just go to dmefd.org. The DMEF is a tax-exempt public charitable organization and has promised to dedicate 100% of every contribution to support our public affairs initiatives. If you believe as I do in the need for a forum which promotes civil discourse and mutually respectful discussion, I hope you'll decide to make a contribution today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at www.harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. We're wrapping up with Liz Beardsley of the U.S. Green Building Council. So, I mean, one of the things that's interesting is you've had, certainly with the Obama administration, you've had 8 years. And prior to that, before George W. Bush, you had the Clinton administration promoting a lot of environmental initiatives at a very significant level, and President Bush as well. Some of his goals and policies in his administration with the EPA were very much oriented towards promoting certain environmental standards and goals, objectives. You now have an administration that is not so inclined, to put it politely, and is actually trying to unravel or unwind a number of different regulations. How do you think that affects what's happening in the industry? You mentioned kind of the 30-year payback, 30-year look, how things are, certain goals for the next 20 or 30 years. How do you think this administration is impacting all of that?
So I think this administration is certainly taking some positions that we disagree with strongly, including announcing the intent to pull out of the Paris Agreement. We're a member of the We Are Still In movement, and we feel strongly that's what we need to do. We're certainly happy to see how many states have stepped forward, as well as city and mayors across the country. And businesses too. So there's really like a groundswell reaction to that, and people are redoubling their commitment. That said, so the current administration is unraveling quite a bit of regulation in sort of the core environmental areas, at least attempting to. There's a lot of litigation trying to, for example, repeal the Clean Power Plan. That's something we oppose, and we'll be sending a letter later this spring on that. And that, for example, would have, I think, created some additional funding into energy efficiency, which would include buildings. So that's like one of the tangible ways that one of the decisions could affect the industry. There's a lot of other stuff that is just sort of at the core of environmental protection. At the same time, we see that a lot of federal agencies, as far as the federal portfolio, really still remains committed to being, their goals of being resilient, saving money on energy and water, need to be met, and they'll be met by high-performing buildings, and that we haven't seen too much of a shift there, and hope that will remain the same.
It's interesting that, for example, I think most Americans don't realize that probably the department that has been most sensitive to issues related to the environment, climate change, is probably the U.S. Department of Defense. Mm-hmm. And their planning, they've been incorporating factors related to climate change for years. I don't think most Americans know that. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, in the private sector, you really end up looking at the bottom line. So I'd be interested in your take on when you look at the decreases in the cost of, shall we say, being environmental, building healthy buildings, mm-hmm. constructing healthy buildings and all that, is it possible that the role of the federal government, even if severely diminished by the Trump administration, may not be that big a deal, that there are actually financial and economic forces that are going to carry through regardless of what the president decides? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's absolutely right. The business case, as we talked about, certainly is compelling on its own. I do think there's a place for policy, though, to get more action and to try to scale this up faster. And so things like, the HUD programs, Housing and Urban Development, there's a number of competitive programs where if you're doing energy efficiency in green building, there will be more attractive financing or higher points for those programs. So things like that are important, that may be like in the weeds of policy, but they can help, grow high-performing buildings and keep that moving.
As well. What do you see as the greatest threat to advancing green building and healthy building concepts? It's the last question, so you have to come up with an answer.
I think a couple of things. One is, ironically, dropping energy prices, because that can change the business case, right? So make it easier to do nothing if your electric costs are going down and you haven't done anything, right? And that can also be an equity question too, where you really need to get that energy efficiency out to low-income housing, to affordable housing, so that if rates of electricity go up as a counter-reaction to reduced usage, you want to make sure that those houses that can't do the retrofits are protected from those increases. But anyways, I think that could be one factor, and really just sort of comfort, because it's hard to change. And so to keep reinvesting in our buildings and sort of pushing that sustainability takes continued effort.
All right. Well, something tells me the U.S. Green Building Council will continue that effort.
We will.
All right. Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here.
That was Liz Beardsley of the U.S. Green Building Council, Senior Policy Counsel for the Council. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.